Welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Lucas, aka 3 Point Spanish King, and today we're here with our friend from New Zealand, Michael, to preview the test series between the two test series between New Zealand and South Africa. We do want to talk about the first test, but we will talk about the second test that happened today. And Michael, very surprising result this test match considering what happened in the first test.
Yeah. I mean, it was. Look, the first test, I think South Africa had just come out of managed isolation, and psychologically that does seem to take a toll. We saw New Zealand in the last series. New Zealand had a few players were just coming back into the country, were in MIQ, whereas Bangladesh had played another match on that same ground, a warm-up match on the same ground, and they were just ready for it. The same thing here. New Zealand players were in the country. They were ready. They'd played games. They were all ready to go match, but South Africa came straight out of MIQ, managed isolation and quarantine, and it just takes something out of you psychologically, and they just weren't up for it. Second test, they were up for it, and I think New Zealand were a little bit shell-shocked by how well South Africa played.
Well, South Africa got off. I think South Africa won the toss and they decided to bat. I think, Michael.
Bizarre. I mean,
you don't literally do that in New Zealand. You literally bowl first.
Yeah, well, to be honest, the only team in recent memory who's chosen to bat first and been successful was the last time South Africa toured here. They chose to bat and they were successful. And other than that, everyone chooses to bowl, and normally the team that bowls first has a big advantage.
Well, it wasn't a big advantage because I think South Africa made 364. They got off to a slow start. I think was it? Oh, I forgot. Sorry, they got off to a strong start. So I was thinking about New Zealand's first innings. Dean Elgar and you might have to help me with the pronunciation here, Michael. Iwi, the guy that made the 100.
Uwe.
Uwe. Okay, yeah. Okay, they got off to a very good start. Dean Elgar is struggling, kind of hot and off with his form, made a 40. But from the get-go, South Africa very dominant in their first innings, Michael.
I was actually surprised that they got Dean Elgar out when they did, because I have a theory with Dean Elgar is that he looks like, well, not quite Chris Martin, but not far off it, but his first 30 balls, and then he turns into Don Bradman. He goes from being, but he's honestly the worst specialist batsman I've ever seen for his first 20 or 30 balls. And if he gets through that period, he is amazing. And he got through that period and then he got out. And that doesn't happen often. Normally, once he gets through that early period, he just destroys people. But he does. He looks out of form. He looks like he's never held a bat in his life for the first 20 or 30 balls. And if he can get through that period, then all of a sudden everything clicks and he's off. So that was... Look, I felt there was the New Zealand's bowling wasn't great, but more than anything, it was really good batting from South Africa. One of the things that they did really well is they used really soft hands. They played it like it was being played in South Africa. It was they were batting like it was a Cape Town, with those same sort of pitches. And Christchurch really is the most South African-like of New Zealand pitches. And the fact that we played them there twice is just nuts, absolute nuts. I mean, since he wasn't going to be a crowd, we should have taken them to Lincoln for the second game, just down the road. Give Lincoln a test match. I mean, it doesn't matter where you play it, there's no crowd. But actually have it somewhere different. Don't have it the same ground twice, especially not the most South African-like ground in the country. Don't give them the advantage of having got used to the conditions. We gave away our home advantage there. So disappointing. But what they did, really soft hands. You saw 4 or 5 edges in the first session bounced in front of the slips because the way they were defending, good technique, and you got to give it to South Africans.
Well, looking at the scorecard, there's a lot of South Africans that made a lot amount of starts. Aidan Markham, who seems to have disappeared since 2 years ago, can't buy a run. Rusty can't buy a run. They all made starts. I think even Marco Janssen made a 30. Maharaj made a 30. They all got very decent starts. So from the naked eye, it looked like batting was very, very easy because even tailenders made a start. unfortunately, unlike Erie, they couldn't get along to make a couple of big scores.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think part of that is that New Zealand are quite good at setting batsmen up. So while they may not, the type of bowlers that New Zealand have don't necessarily clean up batsmen early that regularly. There's a lot of guys get a start against New Zealand and get out. New Zealand is very good at sort of finding a weakness and working away until the batsman gets out. So you do see a lot of guys getting 20s and 30s against New Zealand, and it's particularly against Wagner.
Well, one batsman who didn't struggle was Sarah Erie, who made a spectacular 100. Again, a guy that's playing his debut series, I think, and just looked right at home on these pitches, Michael.
Yeah, look, he had a really good technique for that sort of pitch. It'll be interesting to see him with a little bit more sideways movement. But he was certainly when all it was is sort of slightly variable bounce, and the odd one kicks up a little bit. He had a really good technique for that. There wasn't, and look, New Zealand's bowling lineup, if the ball doesn't swing, they do look a bit toothless, and that's one of the advantages that Wagner and Janssen get, and Henry to a degree as well. That they're not quite reliant on swing, but when there wasn't much swing early on, Southey suddenly, and look, he asked a lot of questions, but he didn't have that X factor that makes him almost unplayable when the ball's, he's got the three, the one that curves out, the one that goes straight, and then the one that decks back off the pitch. And you just don't, if you're in the point where you can't tell which one it is, batting becomes very, very hard. If you remove the one that goes away, it's suddenly a whole lot easier to play it. And that's sort of what happened a little bit.
And speaking of your bowlers, probably the pick of the bowlers was Neil Wagner. Again, as you just said, if the ball isn't swinging, other bowlers have to find another way. Neil Wagner did that. He picked up 4 wickets. It looked like the pick of the bowlers to me in the first innings. Yeah,
I mean, look, he loves getting in the contest. You sort of know that he's likely to pick up wickets if there's sledging started and the batsmen are having a chat. If they're having a chat, that's his that gets his mojo running. That gets his engine going. It's like, we've got a confrontation here. We've got a, and he'll make little jokes and try to get them talking so that he can then get into them. And he needs that. And a couple of South African guys gave it to him, he thrived on it. He loved the contest. Yeah.
Well, we should know that by his contest with Matthew Wade, peppering bouncer after bouncer, Matthew Wade copying it a couple of years ago in Australia. So we should all know what.
First or the last to have that happen to him.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now we'll go on to the New Zealand's first innings, and this is where I said they got off to a very poor start. Tom Latham did not bat very well. Will Young did not bat that very well.
Darren Conway. Both of them were got out with very good bowling, to be fair.
Yeah.
And Latham faced 4 balls from Rabada.
Yeah.
All 4 balls were on or outside leg stump. And the 4th one, he got an edge to and was caught down the leg side. It was a plan. Yeah. It was an unusual plan. You don't really expect to do that as an opening batsman. That's not what you're expecting to be playing. And it caught him. It got him out. It caught him out. It was well executed. Good plan. Executed well. Will Young,
Go on, Michael.
Sorry, Will Young, same thing. But with him, they were all on or outside off stump. Yeah, they were trying to get him to play his cover drive. He eventually did play his cover drive, and he got caught. They had a plan and they executed it well. You've got to give the credit to the bowlers there, and Will Young and Tom Latham both need to go away and think about how do they do that better.
Yeah, with the plan that you just mentioned, you might see that against a David Warner who likes to put bat on ball, but to a Tom Latham, that's a very strange plan. That's as you said, it wasn't a plan; it was premeditated. But it's very strange. Tom Latham isn't really a leg side player, and Tom Latham didn't really handle it that great.
I think actually the leg glance was one of the shots he plays early on, and that's probably why they targeted it. They knew that he's got 2 or 3 shots that he plays early in his innings, and he'll play only those shots, and then he'll gradually expand as he goes throughout. The leg glance is one. The leg glance off the hip that sort of tuck it around the corner for one is one of his go-to shots. And that was what he got out trying to play. So it was within his plan, but it was just good execution from Rabada.
Well, as you mentioned with the bowling of Rabada, Rabada was absolutely fantastic. Janssen was absolutely fantastic. And New Zealand, they were in all sorts of trouble in that first innings. But an amazing innings by Colin de Grandhomme with his batting. I believe that's his second 100 of his career, and really got New Zealand along with Daryl Mitchell. I think he made a 60 or 70.
In really, some ways, Daryl Mitchell, once Kane Williamson's back, only one of Daryl Mitchell and Colin de Grandhomme will be playing. So if one of them does well, the other one has to do well too, because otherwise it's their heads on the block. So one of those two will be dropped, and they get to decide which one it is. So Mitchell did better in second, but no, de Grandhomme, when he's on, and if you've watched him in domestic cricket, which I've watched him a bit in domestic cricket, he has the ability to play a bunch of different modes. International cricket, he seems to only really do a couple of things. But that was a really good Colin de Grandhomme innings. He had very clear, and I know like people talk about him being a dumb cricketer. I don't think that he is. He had a very clear plan in terms of which batsman he was going after, which batsman he was just going to defend. You saw at the start, he didn't have any of Maharaj bowling at him. And his 100 came up off 36 balls. But he ended up, it was 50, sorry. The 100 was 36 balls, that would be really something. His 50 came up off 36 balls. So, it's humming along. But then he then hit a whole bunch of dot balls, and he was on about 70 dot balls. He had, after 70 deliveries, he's on 52. So he'd scored only 2 runs in the next 34 balls. He ended up scoring at an overall strike rate of about 70 after having 140 for his first 50. So you saw it was very much he wasn't just painting by numbers. He was targeting which bowlers to go after, and when he felt the matchup was in his favour, he really did go after them. And it was good. It was the Test match batting that you read about from the time before ODI cricket, when there used to be attacking guys that would just go and target 1 or 2 guys and really go after them, and then just push it round off the others and wait until they had their moment. It was a bit like what you'd read from maybe Everton Weekes or even Walter Hammond. Now obviously he's not quite at that level as a batsman, but Colin de Grandhomme is actually a very talented batsman. He would go close to making the side even if he couldn't bowl.
Well, he is batting at 6, so that's a specialised position.
He comes in after Blundell.
Oh, after the keeper, sorry, Blundell or the keeper. Yep, sorry, my bad.
But he has batted at 6 before. He can bat in the top 6. Probably more suited to 7, though, because of the way he plays.
Yes,
he doesn't really need guys at the other end. He's going to go for it regardless. So he's
one of those. He seems one of those guys that isn't going to stick around too long, play defensive shots. Of course, with South Africa's bowling, no doubt Rabada was the pick of the bowlers. Marco Janssen, we'll get more into him in a minute. He did extremely well. But no doubt it was the Rabada show. We all know he's been battling with injuries throughout his career. But when he's on song, Michael, he's a top 5 bowler. He is very, very potent. He showed today that he was back to his best in this particular innings, in the first innings of New Zealand's batting.
Yeah, there was some smart stuff that he was doing. You'd see him mixing up his pace, a little bit like Richard Hadley, who was a genuine quick bowler who mostly bowled medium pace, and then threw the odd quick one in. Rabada was mixing up his pace a little bit. He was experimenting with where to bowl to get to create problems for the batsman. It was a little bit like Ravi Ashwin in some ways in terms of the way he was going about his bowling. And he was just he just worked the batsman over. It's delightful watching someone like that really doing their job.
So Rabada picked up 5 wickets. So we moved to New Zealand, South Africa's second innings. And Michael, they were in a little bit of trouble. At one stage, they were 5 for 130, and we thought, well, maybe if New Zealand can knock them over cheaply, I think it was day 4, and get the total under around 250, that might be gettable. So 250, 300. That might be gettable. But again, their wicketkeeper, Kyle Vander Sri, you might have to help me with that, Michael, that pronunciation. I'm not really good with these South African pronunciations. I think we've lost Michael. Have we lost Michael? We have lost you, Michael. If you cannot, we can...
Really?
Okay, there we got Michael back. Okay.
Okay. I think it's Verena is the keeper.
Okay, yeah, Verena, yes. Made a fantastic 100 and got support by Mulder and Rabada, of all people, with his batting, and got South Africa out of trouble into a very strong position, Michael.
Yeah, look, tail end runs are actually really, really valuable. And, you saw Mulder first and then Rabada, but also, I mean, Janssen stuck around for a long time and allowed Verena to keep playing, and then Sampala as well. He just kept batting and batting. I mean, he should have been out a couple of times, but the New Zealanders dropped the catches and he lived longer. Lived another day. That was, the fact that you normally expect roughly half the runs to come after the fall of the 4th wicket. So they got 103 for 4. You expect them to be about 210. You don't expect 354. So I mean, that was outstanding from the tail, and those runs hurt. Those runs really hurt team.
Oh yeah.
If they had been all out for 220.
Yeah. No, we have lost Michael again. Okay, well, I think Michael was having network issues. No, Michael's back. Keep going, Michael.
I was about to say, if they'd been all out for 220 and set New Zealand 290 to win or 280 to win or something, that would have been one heck of a game. And that was what we were looking at. We were looking at, it looked like 200 was probably a reasonable score for them, which was going to be a really tight chase, 270-ish. But they just batted and batted and batted, and New Zealand had no answer for it.
And we go into the final innings, New Zealand's second innings. I think they needed 400 to win, Michael.
Yeah, 420.
As you just said, if they would have bowled them out for 200, that could have, as you said, one heck of a game. Tom Welsh, there's not much to say about Tom Latham or Young. They only lasted 2 balls, Michael, each. Again, the Casey Rabada got them both out again, did the damage.
Yeah, and look, the same way of getting the wicket for Will Young. I didn't actually see Latham's dismissal, so I don't know how that happened. But I don't think it was the same. I think that was just a tired shot from being in the field for as long as they were.
I don't know. I sorry to interrupt you there. I don't know. I haven't got video of that, but it was caught by the wicketkeeper, so it might have been the same dismissal.
No, it was caught by Van der Dussen, who's not a keeper. Gully.
Yeah, Kyle Vanderbilt. Yeah. Go ahead, Michael. And sorry to stop Michael there, but I think we have lost him again. There he's back again momentarily. Yep, we keep losing it. Keep going. Yep, keep going, Michael. You're doing good. Keep going.
What I was saying is, if the team's been up in the field for a long time, it's normally worth 2 wickets. It normally got two early wickets, and that's what happened. But also, Tom Latham's starting to get a bit of a reputation as being a minnow basher. He's great against spin. He's great against the guys that aren't quite so quick, but he struggled against Australia. He struggled against South Africa. He struggled against England. And you sort of think, maybe your record is perhaps a little bit flattering because of how well you've done against Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and teams like that. It'd be really nice to see.
He did make that 90. He did make that 90 in India in the first match, I believe. Yeah,
and that's right. He's great against spin. So when you got a predominantly spin attack or that sort of thing, he's up against, not a problem. And look, I'm not saying that he's unable to score big runs against quick bowling, but he's less likely to. It's the opposite of Henry Nicholls, who just seems to be unrivaled against pace bowling. I mean, literally, he's averaging at the moment similar to Don Bradman against pace bowling. But you put a spinner in his way and he just turns to custard. Averages something like 108 against pace and 16 against spin in the last 3 years. So,
that's a nice Don Bradman reference there. With the back to the run chase. Unfortunately, New Zealand really struggled. I think they were 4 for 90, and you thought, well, this is going to be a totally annihilation. But Darren Conway steadied the ship along with I think it was Tom Blundell, the wicketkeeper. Pretty sure he's the wicketkeeper in New Zealand. I'm not sure I'll get that one right. Conway made a fantastic 90. Very unlucky to get 100. Did face that an in-swinging Yorker that got our LBW. But he played extremely well. Tom Blundell played extremely well. Thoughts on their innings?
Oh, yeah, I mean, they did. Conway, again, it was one of those innings where you sort of, look, he plays a nice cover drive, but you don't really notice him scoring runs. Like, if you remember Yunus Khan, you get to the end of the day and you think, Yunus Khan scored 150. I don't remember that happening.
No.
He just scored runs. And Mahela Jayawardene was another one. He just scored runs. He just gone. And Conway's the same thing. He just scores runs, and he just does it time after time after time. So it was another one of those innings, a bit like Ross Taylor as well. Ross Taylor was a similar sort of mold. He just people think, he's not going that well recently, and you look at his record and it's like, oh no, he's at 200s and 450s in his last 10 innings. Actually, it's going pretty well. Conway's got that sort of feeling, but he just loves scoring, and it was one of those innings. You could see he was enjoying the battle. He was enjoying the challenge.
He's a fighter.
And I mean, I'd imagine he was getting a little bit of there was a little bit of sledging in Afrikaans happening, I'd imagine, but nothing that he wouldn't be used to from playing against Auckland. In fact, it's quite interesting. Auckland club cricket is very much, a lot of the clubs have very much become ethnically divided. So there are clubs that are almost all Indian and clubs that are almost all South African. And 3 clubs now that are pretty strongly South African. And so you get them.
Anyone from there watching this, it was not my idea to set Michael up with that. That was completely his statement. I have nothing to do with that. So do not come on me with those comments.
Auckland is a large South African population, and they tend to be clustered in a few suburbs. So the cricket teams in those areas tend to be, some of those clubs have got 10 South Africans out of the 11 in the playing, 10 South Africans in the playing 11. And so there is a lot of sledging and Afrikaans going on in Auckland club cricket. And so I'd imagine there's a similar, that there was a number of things being said between, I know certainly Wagner like to get into it in English or Afrikaans, doesn't worry him.
I was going to say, Michael, well, maybe Wagner and Conway can speaking to each other out in the middle in South Afrikaans.
yeah, not much good when you're playing South Africa, but it'd be quite useful against other teams.
Exactly. Yes. Keep going, Michael.
Yeah, in fact, actually, the New Zealand water polo team, they all learned Māori so they could speak to each other in a language when they're playing that that the opponents couldn't understand. It wouldn't work very well with the New Zealand cricket team, but Māori is a pretty easy language to learn. It doesn't have a very large vocabulary. Lots of words get used multiple ways, so you get the hang of it pretty fast. But there is some advantages there. Look, but what we saw, Blundell again, He's really good when the ball's a bit older. He loves batting in the second innings. In domestic cricket, I did look through. He didn't have a single score for 2 seasons over 20 in the first innings, and yet he averaged 50. And did it because he was the king of the second innings. Once the pitch got a bit softer and the spinners came into it, that's when he started to dominate. And then again, it was the second innings. He started to go up. But then for some reason, it was like they decided after lunch, hey, we're going to try and knock these runs off in the next half an hour. And both de Grandhomme and Blundell both just tried to launch everything into orbit, and were both out within 3 overs, and the game was over. At that point there, you're not going to expect as good a batsman as far as tail enders the New Zealanders are. They're still tail enders. They're really good for 9, 10, 11. They're not, though, the guys that you're going to back to score 200 runs to take you to victory. And so the game was over the second that those two were out. And I just feel like it was tactically perhaps not the right move, having them try to win the game from that position.
So, yeah, I was actually just, that was going to be my next question. Do you support what de Grandhomme did with Blundell? Risk losing the test match to win it, or playing for a draw, playing safe? In hindsight, you can say, well, maybe they should have played for a draw. But do you understand the decision, or do you?
I understand the decision.
Because let's not forget, Michael, they are 1-0 up in the series. So if they draw it, they win the series.
Yeah, but I mean, perhaps they both felt that the defensive technique against the question that being asked them wasn't sufficient, and so they had to get some of the guys away from the bat. And you saw India when they had that big run chase in Australia where they chased down that big score. There was the session between lunch and tea, or the middle session. They came out and they really attacked the bowling for a little bit. And I think it was Rishabh Pant.
I don't remember, Michael.
Didn't happen. But he took a risk on for a little bit. And they actually, and Pujara as well. Remember, Pujara had scored almost nothing. And then all of a sudden, he went for about 40 balls. He scored about 40 runs of them. Then he went back into a shell and scored almost nothing for a while again after that. But
well, I'm glad we're going down this memory lane, Michael. I'm glad you're taking me down there. I thought this was in the past now, but thanks for reminding me all this.
but the reason why I was bringing that up is that that is sort of becoming the model or the blueprint for how to chase a big score. Is you've got to get a little bit ahead of the run rate, have a few overs where you start to put the doubt in the bowlers' minds, and I think that might have been strategically what they were trying to do. I'm just not sure the timing was right for it.
Yeah,
I think it would have been better to have waited until drinks, maybe wait another hour and then have a go. But if they felt that their defensive technique wasn't up to it, and they needed to push them in back from around the bat, then there's some merit to that.
I'm just glad he didn't bring up Headingley 2019.
I could if you'd like.
No, that won't be necessary. We've I had to stay up at 3 a.m. to watch that, so we won't get into that. So as you mentioned,
you sit up all night and then get destroyed at the end. The World Cup final was one of those for me.
Yeah, when you get just absolutely upset, crying, carrying on like a pork chop, no one needs that. As you said with New Zealand's run chase, their tailenders did do okay, but unfortunately, like you just said, the game was done when de Grandhomme and Blundell decided that they needed to go for glory and chase down this one target. So we'll go with the bowling side. I actually want to speak about this Marco Janssen. Debut series against India. Literally wanted to fought with Bumrah. Wanted to throw hands with him, very aggressive player. Only very young, mind you, very, very young. But he looks, you look at him, you think, geez, he's been around for a long time. He's a tough guy, but his bowling is magnificent. And this series, again, Michael, he was fantastic.
Well, he was discovered by Virat Kohli too. He was a
IPL,
It was a net ball that was provided to the South African team when he was 16 or something. And Collier's like, "That's good. Yeah, we need you." And so he sort of he'd made a comment about him, similar to how McGrath discovered Wagner. Because when McGrath was doing a fast bowling session, the training session, it's like, gee, this short left arm is pretty handy. And that sort of was how he ended up going to Essex, where he got picked up by Mike Essendon and taken to Otago and became a New Zealander. So it was Glenn McGrath. It's a lot to. We finally have something to be thankful for him as a New Zealander. It was some of our worst ever cricketing memories. He's also given us Wagner, so we can forgive him for a little bit.
Not just with the ball. I think he's done it with the bat as well on that rare once occasion.
That 50 was the worst moment of New Zealand cricketing history. That was worse than the 26 all out.
I've got him, folks. I've got him. I finally got Michael. I've got him. He's lost for words. I've absolutely got him with the Glenn McGrath. Who would have thought after all these years, Glenn McGrath still putting misery on New Zealanders?
but with Janssen, one of the things that he's got is he's got the left arm angle and the height. So he's asking questions that no other bowler really asks. And I mean, Mitchell Starc to a degree, but Stark's quite a different bowler. But he's asking questions. You can't prepare for that really until you've faced it. Morné Morkel was someone who a lot of batsmen struggled with because the bounce that he got and the pace that he had.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to some. I was on the South African tour when New Zealand got humiliated in 2012, 13, somewhere around there. Talking to some of the players, and they said, Steyn is getting all these wickets, but really, Steyn and Philander were getting wickets, but really it was Morkel who was causing the problems because the batsmen were under so much pressure from Morkel, they'd get a loose one from Steyn or Philander and they'd hit it straight to a fielder, get out. But Morkel was the one who really caused the problems. And the way they fixed that is they put the bowling machine on top of a ladder. And so it was bowling from like 16 feet tall or whatever. They actually measured out where his hand was on TV. They tried to estimate how high his hand or his release point was, and they set the bowling machine up there and practiced with it. And then by the time they faced him in the one-day cricket, they were ready for him. But you can't do that until you face them and know what the challenges are. And so Janssen, it's really hard to prepare for that. Where are you going to find a 6'10" left armour to practice against? They don't tend to turn up on your net bowlers.
Yeah. Well, he's taller than Mitchell Starc, so he's really tall. So
he's the same height as Janssen.
Oh yeah. I'm glad you brought up Jamieson. New Zealand got bowled out. They fell short. And I want to go on Jamieson now. A brilliant start to his career. We're comparing him to all kinds of bowlers. Even his batting we thought was good.
I never bought it. I never drank the Kool-Aid on his batting.
I remember you did say that. He's only up against these kind of bowlers. But the last couple of series, the Bangladesh series, and this South African series, I won't count the Indian series because all fast bowlers struggle there. He's really been, well, there you go. He's been very disappointing in these series. Forget about the batting, just his bowling. Is that a lapse in form, or is that it just happens to every bowler? He'll be back.
Yeah, look, I didn't think he bowled particularly badly. I thought actually the spell that he bowled with Matt Henry, where they're bowling together. While Jamieson, I don't think picked up any wickets in that spell. I think Henry picked up 4 or 5. Jamieson was building a lot of the pressure that was causing Henry to get the wickets. So, you look at that, you think, well, did he score? Did he take wickets? No. But did he do his job? Yeah, I think he did. So, sometimes the scorecard doesn't tell the full story.
Well, my apologies to Cole Jamieson. We'll go to the first test because as I said, we did one at a previous, but I had cricket commitments. I could not make these with you. So this was very one-sided. This is why this second test was quite a surprise. This was very one-sided. I think South Africa only made 90 or 80. What I do know was the Matt Henry show in that first innings. Absolutely went berserk. Bowled sensational, picked up 7 wickets for only 20. And South Africa just never really got anywhere in that first innings, Michael.
Yeah, look, that happens. It's when a bowler destroys a team in a session or two, it's very, very hard to crawl your way back into the test. And then they didn't have a spin bowler, and so who scored a century? Henry Nichols did. If you dare to play against New Zealand without a spin bowler, you've got to basically bowl the rest of the team out because Henry Nichols is going to score big runs against you. You've got to have a spinner in your side when you're playing against Henry Nichols, preferably an off spinner, but left arm spinner will do, leg spinner will do. You just have to be someone that can bowl spin. And in fact, when you look at Henry Nichols in the first innings, in that match, I think he didn't. I mean, he got out to Olivier, but it was Markram actually was the guy that actually gave him some grief. Because when Markram came on, all of a sudden he started to struggle, and then his bowling his silly little leg breaks, and then Markram went and picked up de Grandhomme too, or 45. So that was, I think that may have been the seeds for them recalling Maharaj, because the fact that a part-timer caused some problems for New Zealand. Maybe if we had a proper spinner, we might be able to do a bit better.
And Maharaj in that second test match actually did pretty well.
He was the difference between the sides, to be honest. I mean, if you give them, as well as Rabada and Janssen bowled, they didn't bowl that much better than New Zealand bowlers. Maharaj was the thing that gave them, and they were able to have him at one end, rotate the others from the other, give them all a good rest. And you got 4 quicks and a spinner. The quicks all get a decent rest, and they're able to bowl, without being tired. And New Zealand didn't have that luxury. Well, de Grandhomme had it to a degree. They ended up having to roll slightly too long as spells and just not be at top in top gear the whole time. So I mean, Maharaj made a huge difference.
As you said, the New Zealand's first innings were only batted once because it was an innings defeat. As you said, Henry Nichols made 100. Got the score here. Tom Blundell, very unlucky, made 96.
Almost
would have been
almost got a first inning century, but that didn't. But again, he came in when what was he on? It was on the 3rd day, I think, when he came, or 2nd day when he came into bat, and after Wagner had just demoralised South Africa.
Yes, he made that 49. Yes.
Yeah, it was 53 overs, and when he came in, Wagner played. You feel for him because he really deserved a 50. He batted so well, and then just almost it felt like he'd stopped watching the ball. He was thinking about getting his 50 and got out. But then then Blundell came in, and then Mitchell came in, and then Blundell. So I mean, Blundell didn't come in until almost 70th over.
Wagner was an eye watchman.
That's really his. It was, and then the game was perfectly set up for a de Grandhomme blitz, and that's what we got. De Grandhomme he's my favourite batsman in the world. I've got to say, there's no one I enjoy watching more than Colin de Grandhomme. And some of the stories about how far he hits the ball and things like that. There's at Eden Park. There's a thing called the Concourse Club, which is where you hit the ball at from the number 2 ground into the concourse on the number 1 ground, right? And there's some decent players. Like Aravinda de Silva, when he played for Auckland, got on there. Lou Vincent got on there. Colin Munro's hit a couple of balls there. Mark Chapman's got on there. Colin de Grandhomme made it to every game one season. Every single game he managed to hit the ball there, and he hit one that didn't hit the concourse. It went all the way into the north stand at the number 1 ground. So it wasn't that it hit it into the stand of the ground next door. It's quite a hit. He also I was at a game at Colin Maiden Park, because one of the smaller grounds in Auckland. Well, smaller in terms of seating capacity, but a much bigger ground. And I saw him hit the ball out of the park there across the road and into the car park across the other side of the road, where it's got it's 130 meters. I've used Google Maps to measure how far it is from the wicket to there. 130 meters is how far that ball travelled. He can hit a big ball.
Yeah.
And when he's going, he just looks so casual. He's just as if it's nothing. It's a six. Oh yeah, that's all. He's so laid back. I love it. And
yeah, even when he scored that 100, he was very laid back. He's like, oh yeah, 100, it's okay.
Yeah. It's like he's got a motor oil running through his veins instead of blood. It's that like but he's super casual about things. He doesn't seem to get too stressed out in most situations, but when he does get stressed out, he becomes absolutely rubbish. So batting at the like a run chase final over of a T20, say he needs 8 to win, you don't want him there because he starts thinking about everything instead of just playing his natural game. Just seeing the ball hit the ball works much better than him trying to actually play under pressure.
And also that second innings, we haven't talked about. So the New Zealand's first innings. Sorry, Matt Henry made a 50. So even him batting at 11.
I know.
What a damage.
Oh, and look, psychologically, that destroys a team. When number 11, you're in there. If you're an opening batsman and you score, and you manage to score any runs after the number 11 from the other team's scored a 50, you've got to be mentally pretty strong because you've been ready to bat for almost an hour while this guy, you're thinking it's going to be any second now. For almost an hour, possibly more than that. I think Matt Henry might have been in there for close to 2 hours. And all that time, the opening batsmen were in sort of that ready-to-go mode. And what happens when they come out? 2 balls later, the first one's gone. 9 balls later, the next one's gone. It's, before long, they were 4 for 3 after 4 and a bit overs. And that.
No, we keep losing Michael, but we'll stay with Michael because I'm sure he'll be back. You're back. There we go. Keep going, Michael.
I'm on my cell phone at the moment. I'm not on Wi-Fi, and I'm only on 2G in this area. So
that is only good. Like I said, we'll keep going, Michael. Even if you're cutting out, we'll keep going. Go ahead.
But I think the psychological pressure of that just destroyed the top order from South Africa. I mean, you've got to bowl. You don't like to bowl well, and see how they still have to put the ball on the spot. But that psychological pressure is really hard to get over.
And New Zealand didn't have to bat against South Africa. Not much better in their second innings. We won't go into the bat. Tim Southey picked up 5 wickets. Was very potent in that second innings, Michael.
Yeah, and it was the sort of professional bowling that you'd expect from someone like Tim Southey. He worked the batsman over. He got the ball when again what I was saying before, when the wind's in the right direction, the ball's swinging for him, and then doing something off the pitch, he's unplayable, and that's what he got into that situation. That's what was happening, not much you can do against it.
No, so that was the series 1-1 draw. I've been over this with Michael. In hindsight, should this have been a third Test series? Because this was actually this. If you look back at this, I know that's hindsight. And you've explained the money in the past, but this is a Test series. You look at 1-1, it's boring, but this was far from boring. This was a high quality series, Michael.
There should have been a 5 Test, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
God, I would love that, please.
Look, 4 Tests. The way I'd like to see it done, and I've written about this before. I'd like there to be a league, World Cricket League, rather similar to the Test Championship, but a league. The top 4 teams, the next 4 teams, promotion relegation every 2 years, or every 3 years. I figured it out on a schedule to make it work. But you play everyone in your league, and you play half the teams in everyone in your league home and away, and you play every team in the league above and below yours, either home or away. And you do that, and then the series lengths are determined by what's happening. 2 top tier teams play. 5-tier series. Top tier versus second tier, 3-tier series. 2 second-tier teams, 4-tier series. Second tier versus a third tier, 2-tier series. Having it like that, and so the length of the series is determined by the rankings of the teams. You want to play more Test cricket, you win some more games. I'd like to see that happen. Now, to do that, there's all sorts of financial things that have to happen, and of course, we've got to get through that. If England or Australia were relegated, then you'd have the Ashes having to be a 3-tier series, which wouldn't be very popular.
No, that would be a problem.
You'd have to work around that. And the issue of Pakistan and India, if they ended up in the same pool, having to play home and away against each other, and what do you do with the politics? There's all sorts of issues there. But I think ICC should be looking at doing something like that. So you have to have longer series.
I'm with you on the longest. I'm actually with that proposal, mate. I'm actually with you. With the amount of test matches between series. I 100% agree. I see a lot of these nations, play each other only 2 test series. So hindsight, Pakistan and Australia, I'm really glad that's a 3rd test series. That could have easily been a 2-tester. So I'm really happy that's a 3rd test series. I think this deserved more than a 2-test series. I'm over 2 test series, to be honest. I think there's far too many, but that's another combo for a different day. We move on.
New Zealand and South Africa have played.
Yeah.
Sorry, New Zealand and South Africa have played a 5-tier series before. It was 3-2 to South Africa, with it being 2-0, and on the last day, at lunch on the last day, New Zealand needed 140 to win with 5 wickets in hand. That's a 5-tier series going down to the wire, and that's the sort of thing that there hasn't. That was in 1969. There hasn't been another one since then.
But I know the other co-host Gurvi will be angry with this, but is formats like the PSL, Big Bash, IPL to blame? Why we've only got these 2 test series because of the money they pump from T20 cricket? Okay.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the T20 has played a part, but actually teams play more test matches now than they used to. People are complaining about the fact New Zealand only play 8 test matches a year. It wasn't that long ago that New Zealand only played 6 test matches a year. So it used to be we played 1 3-match series at home and 1 3-match series away. Now we play 2 2-match series at home and 2 2-match series away. So I think part of it is just that there are more teams playing, and so if you're going to fit 4 series in a year, 2 test matches is sort of how that happens. And also, I guess that a little bit the leagues have perhaps diluted the interest in tests. But I think actually, I think we're seeing the opposite. I think test match cricket is growing a little bit on the back of the leagues, because people are watching cricket more, and then there's this different form of cricket that's so captivating because it's so different. And I think that the thing that really is losing out is one-day cricket.
Oh, dude, I really wish you would have said yes and agreed with me on that. My God, I would have had a field day with that answer. You know me, Michael, on Twitter, how much I blame the IPL. Having said that, I do want to mention, because New Zealand have a series coming up that's a little bit historic. The Australian series has been cancelled because we don't play outside of Australia anymore. So
actually, that one wasn't your fault. That one was entirely New Zealand cricket. Well, entirely New Zealand government.
We won't get into that, but we all know why. They have a historic series against Netherlands for the first time ever. They have, I think, a 1-off T20 and 3 ODIs. A little bit disappointed that there's no test match, a once-off test match. Would that have been an appropriate time to give Netherlands a license?
Netherlands don't want to play tests. They've applied for full membership on the proviso that they don't have to play test matches. So, and that's something the ICC is having to decide as to what do they do with that. But look, one of the things that's quite good is that a bunch of the Netherlands players actually play in New Zealand. They live in New Zealand and play in New Zealand. There's quite a big Dutch community here. So you'll see a few of those players are quite used to New Zealand conditions, and there'll be a bit of local knowledge, being passed around. Logan van Beek is a really high quality player who could probably play for New Zealand or could have been playing for New Zealand by now. and can at any point because he's New Zealand born, and so he can switch his allegiance at a moment's notice. But he'll be playing for the Netherlands. Interesting story. He's actually eligible for the West Indies as well. His granddad played for West Indies and New Zealand, and then his mum's Dutch, so that's how he's eligible for all three. And he played against the West Indies for New Zealand A, for New Zealand 11, and his granddad, I think, came to the game to watch him play, which was kind of cool. That when New Zealand and West Indies play, it's the Sammy Gulen Cup, which is Logan van Beek's grandfather. So he plays for the New Zealand 11. He's only played for New Zealand A or New Zealand because he's Dutch officially. But he's lived all his life in New Zealand pretty much. And a few of the Dutch players have had trouble getting visas, getting into New Zealand. And so they're really stoked that the Netherlands are playing because they've been able to get slots with the Dutch team so they can get back and get back to their families. They haven't been able to get home. It's a neat series. I'm glad that we're playing it. I'm glad it's happening. It's a pity that this season we're going to have. It looks like we're going to have a total of 7 international cricket matches, 8 international cricket matches in the whole season. Two tests against Bangladesh, which really would have been great to have had a 3-test series because they were much better than we were expecting. And then 2 tests against South Africa, which we would have loved to have had a 3rd one or a 4th one, and then we finally do get 4 matches, but it's against the Netherlands. Just a little bit of an anticlimax.
Well, going by the way you spoke about New Zealand, the Netherlands. So you're expecting them to 5-0 whitewash of New Zealand, one of the T20s and 3 of the ODIs. Okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty hard to do a 5-0 whitewash before that series. Look, one of their best bowlers, Michael Rippon, has actually made himself unavailable because he wants to qualify for New Zealand and he wasn't born in New Zealand. So that's going to hurt them a little bit. It would be nice to have had them playing for them. Look, they've got some players, but they're not, they would be, it'd be a good contest between Netherlands and New Zealand A. They're not quite at the same level. But look, and they're on the improve. They've got some good players, but they're not quite good enough that they'd push a pretty handy New Zealand one-day side. New Zealand's got a pretty good one-day record. I think we're ranked number 1 in the world at the moment.
World Cup finalists, so they're pretty decent. They're pretty decent.
We've made two World Cup finals in ODI and a World Cup final in T20 in the last 3 tournaments. So and the tests as well.
They're pretty handy in the white ball
squad at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So the one-off T20 begins on 25th of March, and the ODI series starts on the 29th of March. New Zealand's next Test match is also in England. We won't get into that, but that starts on 2nd of June. We'll get Michael for that show. But Michael, thank you for joining us to preview this that series and to the upcoming Netherlands series. Thank you so much for coming in. And you haven't been with us for a while. Unfortunately, due to my cricket commitments, we couldn't get you for the first test, which is a shame. But we will certainly get you back for that English series and see New Zealand roll them 3-0.
Sounds good.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for coming. And that's it for today's show. Please add Michael on Twitter. He much loves your opinions and tweets. He loves playing the worldie game on Twitter. He's fully into that. I still don't understand it. I'm not quite that educated. So I'm 3 Points Bench King. You're welcome to add me. Thank you, Michael, for coming on. Thank you guys for watching. And see you later. See you, Michael.
See you around.